This is Christina, and today I'm speaking with Virginia-based photographer and artist Andre Hilliard about his wonderful photography and some of the influences on his work. Hello, Andre. Could I start by asking you, as an artist, what was it that first attracted you to the particular medium of photography?
I first became interested in photography when I was about 17 or 18 years old. And I think it was Robert Capa's photographs that I remember being interested in most, and just thinking that he was a really interesting character. His name was Andre Friedman, and he just made up this character of Robert Capa, famous American photographer, and stepped into his shoes. He was originally from Hungary, but I think it was Capa really that first sparked my interest in photography.
You obviously see photography as an art form.
Yeah, I see photography as an art form. Once you have a grasp of lighting and composition, you don't really have to worry about draftsmanship and a steady hand the way a portrait painter does. You just have to click a button. So it's definitely an art form, but perhaps a little bit easier than the job of a traditional portraitist.
As with any other art form, different photographers specialize in different areas: cityscapes, landscapes, still life, and so on. Your particular interest seems to be portraits. Why is that?
Portraits. I am particularly interested in portraits, and I'm not really sure why that is, but I've spent, when I first started working in photography, I did a lot of product photography and still life photography, and I still do. But I think I'm probably interested in portraits at this phase of my career because I've photographed so many objects sitting on a table that it's just more interesting to me to sit down and have a chat with somebody and get to know them and take their portrait. And you meet a lot of interesting people doing portrait photography.
What makes a face particularly interesting to you? When you're choosing your subjects, what exactly are you looking for?
It's difficult to put into words, but when you know it when you see it, really. I know what I'm looking for, but I couldn't really say exactly what it is. You know it when you see it.
Do most people readily agree to be photographed?
People usually do. People are usually very accommodating when I ask to take their picture. Sometimes they're a little standoffish at first, but they're usually very, very accommodating and friendly. And I recently did a portrait of a man who owns a barbecue restaurant out in the mountains, and I drove out to see him, and before I left, told me that he was honored that I came out to take his picture. So sometimes you hear that, and sometimes you just get a funny look, and and people say no.
Is there anything specific that you hope to convey in an image, or is it more art for art's sake?
Well, I guess I've always, I'm not a very chatty person, so I suppose that I've always been drawn more to visual things. So there isn't really anything specific I'm trying to convey in any particular image, but I've always found visual communication more interesting, I suppose, than verbal communication, or perhaps I'm just better at it.
You spoke of Robert Capa, but are there any other photographers who have influenced you or whose work you particularly admire?
Yeah, originally, aside from Capa, Irving Penn and Richard Avedon were big influences of mine, particularly Irving Penn. I think his portraits are the best, really. I think he was the best portrait photographer of the last century, and there's always something interesting going on in an Irving Penn portrait, if it's just the way somebody's sitting, or something they're doing with their hands, or just little things like that you might not think about, but you notice them when you look at the photo, and there's always something, you can always tell it's an Irving Penn portrait.
At the moment, you're working on a very specific and very interesting project. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm working on a project of portraits of World War II veterans at the moment that I hope to turn into a coffee table book someday and publish. Yeah, it really just started out as taking a lot of pictures of my grandfather, who's always a willing subject, and I usually walk away with a really good portrait of him. And he's a World War II veteran. He served in the 8th Air Force in England, and that's really how the project started. And there's we lose about 750 World War II veterans every day, so I think that it's time is of the essence for a project like this, and I think it's important to meet with as many of these people as I can, and just chat with them a little bit and take their pictures and record that history for future generations.
Clearly that is a really worthwhile project. And beyond that, how do you see your work developing? Do you have other plans for future projects?
I do have lots of plans I'm working on at the moment. Nothing's really concrete, but hopefully you'll be hearing more about them in the near future.
Oh, I have no doubt about that at all. I'm sure everyone's going to be hearing a lot more of Andre Hilliard.
Thank you.
But in the meantime, if people would like to see some of your photographs, they can go to your website.
Yeah.
www.andrehilliard.com. Thanks very much for your time, Andre, and all the best in all your projects. Thank you.
Thank you.